You know that moment when someone asks you something simple, and somehow your brain gives you nothing. Maybe they ask what you think. Maybe they tell you a story and wait for your reaction. Maybe it is someone you like. A second ago, you were fine. You had thoughts and knew what you wanted to say. Then they look at you. The moment arrives, and every possible answer starts competing for approval. You think of one response, then question it. Maybe that sounds obvious. Maybe the joke is not funny. Maybe it is too personal. Maybe you have already waited too long, so you say something smaller, or you laugh, or you nod, or you say, yeah, even though your reaction was much more interesting. Later, after the conversation is over, your brain becomes fluent again. The normal response comes back. The funny line comes back. The question you should have asked comes back. And that is what makes it so frustrating, because it proves you were never empty. You were overloaded. A lot of people call this shyness, awkwardness, or being bad at talking. Those labels are not always wrong, but they miss what is happening for a lot of overthinkers. They do not freeze because their mind is empty. They freeze because their mind becomes crowded at exactly the wrong moment. There are too many possible answers, too many interpretations, and too many ways the next sentence could land badly. So the problem is not really a thought problem. It is a traffic problem. Imagine every thought in your head trying to leave through the same door at the same time. One part wants to make a joke. Another wants to ask a good question. A third wants to say something smart. You might be replaying the last thing you said while predicting how they could react to the next one. Nothing gets through cleanly. And while all of that is happening, the conversation keeps moving. From the outside, it can look like you are quiet, distant, or not interested. Internally, you are scanning everything. Their face, their tone, whether your last response landed, and whether the next one will make the silence worse. You also begin tracking yourself. Your speed, your volume, your expression, and whether your reaction was too much or somehow not enough. You are no longer just having the conversation. You are monitoring the conversation. And you are monitoring yourself inside it. You stop being only a participant. You become your own audience. Almost nobody sounds natural when they are trying to perform and review themselves at the same time. That is when the silence becomes dangerous. Maybe the pause is only 2 seconds, but you notice it. Then you notice that you noticed it, and suddenly the pause feels visible. You think, okay, I have waited too long. Now I really need to say something good. That is where the loop begins. Pressure makes you edit harder, and editing takes longer. The longer you wait, the more important the next sentence starts to feel. At first, you were just looking for a response. Now you are trying to rescue the moment. Once you feel like you need to rescue it, every possible answer suddenly feels risky. The safe option seems boring. The personal one feels like oversharing. And the clever response starts to feel like it belonged in a conversation that ended 30 seconds ago. So instead of choosing one, you keep evaluating all of them. Eventually, your brain does what overloaded systems do. It stops. It is not an empty mind. It is a system crash. This is also why some people make it much worse. You may feel completely normal with one person and frozen with another. With people you do not need anything from, you can respond without turning every small mistake into evidence about your personality. But around someone attractive, confident, difficult to read, or important to you, every sentence starts to feel like evidence, interesting or boring, relaxed or awkward, worth liking or not. You stop trying to connect and start trying to manage the version of you they receive. That is an impossible job. The more you try to control the outcome, the more filtered you become, and the less connected you feel. Overthinkers often treat conversation like precision work, as if there is one correct sentence, one perfect tone, and one ideal moment to enter. But real conversations are not built out of flawless lines. Someone says, "That is kind of insane," and you know exactly what they mean. Somebody asks an ordinary question and actually listens. A person starts a story before they fully know how to tell it, says something clumsy, laughs and keeps going. That is how real conversations move, through unfinished things, a reaction, a question, a half-formed thought, something real enough for the other person to touch. When you edit every response before it leaves your mouth, you often remove the part that made it yours. Your first reaction may have been warm, specific, or slightly awkward, but it was alive. Then you make it safer. By the time it comes out, it is flatter. You are not boring. You are trying to sound impossible to reject. This is why just be more confident is not always useful advice. Confidence can help, but it is not always the deepest lever. Some people freeze, mainly because they fear being judged. Others freeze because their mind generates too many interpretations and possible responses at once. Most people have some of both. Neither means you are broken. Your brain is trying to protect you from uncertainty. It cannot know exactly what a look means, whether a joke landed, or whether someone is judging you, or simply thinking, so it keeps checking, editing, and looking for one more piece of information that will make the next sentence safe. But conversation moves too quickly for perfect checking. By the time you have checked every possible path, the moment is gone. That is also why you become fluent after the conversation ends. Once nobody is waiting for an answer, the pressure disappears. Your mind finally has room again, and you think of the clever answer, the natural follow-up, or the story that would have fit perfectly. That does not mean you failed. It means your ability to think returned when every word stopped feeling like a test. The goal is not to recreate perfect hindsight in real time. The goal is to need less of it. So when you feel yourself freezing, the useful question is not, what is the best thing I can say? That question invites the internal committee back into the room. Try this instead. What is the easiest, true thing I can say next? Not the smartest thing, not the funniest thing, just something small enough that you do not need to hold a meeting in your head before saying it. And when your system overloads, do not try to solve the whole conversation. Just pick one lane. You can react, ask, or share. You can react, saying something like, "That would stress me out too." You can ask a question. "Wait, how did that happen?" Or just share. "That happened to me once." That is enough. You do not need to be brilliant. You only need one next move. React, ask, or share. That is the one-lane rule. When you freeze, the problem is usually not that there is no path forward. The problem is that you are trying to calculate every path at once. Choosing one lane lowers the amount of internal work you need to do before you speak. Each time you do it, you teach yourself that an ordinary sentence can survive being heard. A slightly awkward reaction can survive. A basic question can survive. A pause can survive. That is a more useful kind of confidence. Not confidence that you will always sound impressive, but confidence that you can survive sounding human. It also helps to stop treating every pause like proof that you failed. People pause and search for words. They lose their train of thought, interrupt themselves, or laugh at something that was not really a joke. That is not a social disaster. That is what being a person sounds like. So if you have spent yours calling yourself awkward, quiet, boring, or bad at people, do not rush to make that your identity. You may not need a different personality. You may simply need fewer internal checks before you let yourself participate. You do not need to become perfectly smooth. You only need to stop making smoothness the price of entry. Next time you freeze, do not try to rescue the whole conversation. Do not search for the perfect sentence. Ask yourself, what is the easiest true thing I can say next? Then choose one lane, react, ask, or share. Let one thought go first. Because you are not empty. You are not broken. You are not someone with nothing to say. You are someone whose thoughts arrive faster than their permission to speak.